Hi, I'm Marie Chris Rinconada reporting my assigned task about biomedical ethics. Introduction. Jean Bernard, the founder of LARC, a community that is inclusive of people with mental disabilities, reported in his 2008 book, Living Gently in a Violent World, that a few years hence, people with Down syndrome might not be born because they would have been aborted. Koyunik below sampling letter fulfilled Binner's prediction. National health services of Europe nations such as France, Denmark, and the United Kingdom recommend CVS as a form of prenatal testing done around 10 to 12 weeks of pregnancy. It is a sampling of placental tissue, chorionic villus, that allows the detection of birth defects, genetic diseases, and other disorders in the fetus. In 2014, 693 abortions, roughly 90% of those who tested positively in CVS, was carried out in the United Kingdom. Ethics can hardly keep up with the fast and confusing advancement in the fields of genetics, medicine, and pharmacology. An introductory book of ethics for college students cannot cover all the nuanced applications of the theories and available perspectives. The limitations can only permit learners an introductory but sound guide to navigate through these current and emerging developments. For such purposes, personalized biomedical ethics is suggested. Personalized biomedical care. At the turn of the 20th century, personalized theories emerged as a reaction to perceived depersonalization caused by the advent of science, technology, and totalistic systems in philosophy. Though different key thinkers gave their own versions of personalism, a common affirmation is the centrality of the human person for philosophical thought. It posits the value of personhood as a center of life, experience, decisions, and actions. Biomedical ethics has a stable grounding if it holds the inviolable, inherent, and intrinsic value of the person, as well as his relational and communitarian realities. To better guide the introduction to such personalist biomedical ethics, the birth, well-being, and death suitable for the human person are covered. Ethics of prenatal personhood. Heated discussion among ethicists always begins with the question, when does human personhood begin? Locally, the discussion is grounded on the Philippines Constitution that upholds the protection of life of both the mother and the unborn child. The Philippine Medical Association also released a document signed by Dr. Busi Castro and Dr. Oscar Tinio, clearly assuming that human person exists at the point of fertilization conception. Even the culture supports such serious valuation of the unborn in that a pregnant or buntis women is also said to be nagdadalang tao or childbearing, literally human being. Given such bedrock of certainties, the debate persists. For instance, if conception is considered as a process, there has to be a point of readiness for the body to be able to support the reality of the self as a person. Given that the body is not accidental to the integrality of the human being, does it not need this particular state of readiness to be able to support personhood? Such questions, however, are not enough to disprove the claim that human personhood does not begin at the point of conception. At best, these considerations remain simply as questions for discussion. They are not proofs. A more nuanced position which holds that since it cannot be proved or disproved as factual that the human being begins to exist at the very point of human conception. Nevertheless, the fertilized ovum or fetus ought to be treated as a human person. This nuanced position passes on the burden of proof to those who raise such questions as to the personhood of fetuses. If one thinks about it more, a pragmatic support is also found in the fact that each of the participants in the ethical discussion of the start of personhood all went through the same process of conception or fertilization in the womb of her mother. The issue cannot be made light of simply because it is a matter of philosophical discussion. Ectopic pregnancy and the principle of double effect. Jim Cannon reported a discussion in the question of ectopic pregnancy as early as 1893. An interesting point was raised in the discussion of the theologian named Aloysius Sabiti, 1839 to 1898. If the fetus is said to be weight should not be in the case of ectopic pregnancy outside the womb and is threatening the life of the mother, can it be treated as an unjust aggressor? A more precise nuance is even arrived at by presenting it as a materially unjust aggressor, that is, even without intention simply because it is in the wrong place. The immature fetus is a grave threat to the life of the mother. It is likened to someone under the influence of drugs or alcohol who may be so drunk that clear intentions are no longer present but nonetheless severely threatens to kill. A better analogy is even presented in a case when a soldier who belongs to an invading army is detected by a sniper who is defending a particular territory. While unseen, the sniper is not intentionally threatened by the soldier but simply because he is in the place where he should not be. Self-defense demands action, not including fatal shooting, on the part of the sniper. Atheists who belong to the Catholic Communion were given an instruction clearly defining that it is a matter of faith for this particular church, that it is not allowed to use the category of unjust aggressor, formal or material, in questions involving fetal life. Abortion is also defined as an intrinsic evil, as that or act that is unacceptable in any direct unintended form as a human action. The case, then, of ectopic pregnancy occasions the principle of double effect. This principle is applied in the case of an action that is seen to have two results. One is known as good and hence that which we can only intend. Another simultaneous effect is bad. However, but since we do not intentionally do it for that purpose, this can be considered as a mere byproduct of the action. The bad effect is willed to not have occurred at all only if such an instance is possible. The originating act ought to be deemed good or, at the very least, morally neutral. Applying this to the case of ectopic pregnancy, it is unacceptable that the medical professional directly aborts the fetus. Hence, her action of surgically cutting the fallopian tube that is clogged is a more tolerable option. Such a surgical intervention saves the mother but sadly also results in the indirect removal of the misplaced fetus. If personalist ethics is applied to biomedical issues, in this instance, the option that upholds the value of the fetus as that who ought to be treated as a person should be maintained. It may be considered that imputing aggression, albeit materially without intention, to a fetus is indicative of an objectification of one who is deserving of better consideration. Emmanuel Levinas, in his critique of just war, once said that his reservation regarding justification of wars is that in being justified, one loses his mere conscience or conscientiousness. The same can be said here. A justified self-defense may push one to erringly assume that the fetus ought to be treated as a person. Childbearing enhancements, self-improvements, and general well-being. The applications in the field of medicine have put forward wonders in the area of enhancement of human beings. Those who have difficulty in having children, for instance, are now given options to better improve their chance of conceiving a child. The Human Genome Project has promised personally designed drugs that can better improve one's health or recovery from sickness. Given the advancement of human genetic mapping, predispositions to particular sicknesses and syndromes can be detected the earliest as discussed above, even during the first 10 to 12 weeks of pregnancy. While these breakthroughs and applications are not evil in themselves, personalist ethics provide us with a larger view in considering the relational relational and communitarian dimensions of the human person. The cost of childbearing techniques until now is exorbitantly high. While this may not be an issue for those who can afford them, the number of adoptees and children born in poor families deserve to also be considered in the decision. In the cost of childbearing that benefits from the interventions available in high-end hospitals, acceptable in justice for a country that still indicates 40% self-reported poverty. Perhaps the traditional consideration of common good is also in place in this instance. If there are so many children who are orphans, don't they deserve priority over such costly means, especially if the cost of having a single child can in effect suffer two or three children in their rearing to adulthood? Another issue to be considered in the present state of childbearing enhancements has to do with the so-called spurs. Present techniques of child conceiving enhancements involve the harvesting of egg cells from the mother. Since it is impossible or costly to store this without fertilizing them, what are present in hospitals, clinics that give such services are human embryos or fetuses that are awaiting warm implantation. The 100% success of a single implantation is not yet reached, so a number of fertilized eggs or embryos are frozen as spurs. An important question that is occasioned by this process has to do with the spurs that are left after a successful pregnancy up to the full term is achieved. Maintaining the principle that the fetus ought to be treated as a human person. A careful monitoring of the spurs is in order. The Philippines has boasted recently of local doctors' ability to engage in stem cell therapy. While stem cell research has reached developments that most no longer make use of human embryos, the history of this research betrays the fact that it does not exclude such methods. The absence of laws defining spurs as deserving of treatment as human persons simply mean that the spurs are not out of the reach of unconscious therapies. Embryos and the first 14 days are known for their totipotency or multipotency. That is, germine and the spurs are the cells that make up every organ in the human body, including gray matter. That is important for the brain. This is hardly negligible, especially given the presence of massive monetary support for researchers that address these debilitating diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's that hit retired and financially influential first world citizens. The awareness of these issues is too low, and the temptation to enter into it too strong that the victimization or an objectification of these spurs may already be happening in our country. Other self-enhancements and general well-being. Improvements that are now available to those who can afford them ought to be evaluated also along the lines of personalist ethics, while personal improvements such as the intake of glutathione for its aesthetic improvements can hardly be branded as evil or bad. It is a swarm of the objectification that is peddled by such self-actualization products. Most concerning are the products that purport to improve the well-being or intelligence of children. While this may truly be beneficial for them, the question should be raised. Is it contributing to the view that children are like projects that should follow the designs deemed relevant by parents? This objectification affects personal regard between them and leads to intolerance of personal differences between family members. Other products or techniques, including surgery, that cell enhancements should be countered or balanced with an appeal to personal growth that is not only physical, bodily aesthetic, or self-actualization. Directions ought to be inclusive of interior values such as kindness, solidarity, and compassion. While a moneyed person may have access to such services or products, justice and the traditional concept of common good demand a mitigation, individual as well as communal evaluation of these commercialized enhancements. Extraordinary means Indonesia and the significance of a living well. A brief examination of end-of-life ethical issues continues the view that is consistently personalist in orientation. Euthanasia or mercy killing is the direct murder of another human being and is thus unacceptable at this point in the Philippines. The value given to persons is inherent and inviolable for personalist ethics that it excludes the direct unintentional killing of a non-aggressor. End-of-life care ought to be improved to ensure the dignified dying that is worthy of human persons. Pain management and hospice care, particularly for those who suffer, should be explained clearly, made reachable and available especially for the poor in this country. A distinction, however, should be made between euthanasia and the termination of extraordinary means that simply allow the process of dying to take its course. The stoppage of extraordinary means without which the sick person is simply allowed to have a dignified death is not passive euthanasia or euthanasia. Extraordinary means are additional or artificial ways that extend the life of a person, respirator. If the chances of recovering are deemed by doctors as slim and the family no longer has the means to continue the costly use of these means, taking away the respirator does not mean the sick person who can no longer breathe on his own. The process of the death in this instance is permitted to follow its course and the person is simply allowed to go through the process of a dignified death. The writing of a living will is therefore relevant to give guidance to loved ones and the remote possibility that an accident or sickness renders someone brain dead, comatose, or in a persistent vegetative state. Personal autonomy is given priority even in such instances that the living will that is left behind is significantly considered as the person open to organ donation and to what extent of organ harvesting for the life of other persons is permissible. Hospitals put up DNR, do not resuscitate, cards in accordance with a patient's living will, else the wishes of the next of kin is followed. Again, DNRs are different from euthanasia. It is the rescinding of CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or other means of resuscitations in the event of fatal crash of the patient. DNR allows for dignified death. The writing of living wills permits the resolution of confusion that may arise in families regarding such difficult decisions. Personalist ethics also stresses the communitarian dimension in other or in the writing of living will. Other persons can only be saved through the willingness of the brain-dead patient, expressed in the living will he shall leave behind to give them with an extension of life through organ donation. Conclusion. The current breakthroughs and quiz is pushing new researches in medicine and pharmacology may lead humanity to lose sight of what is of utmost importance, the inherent, inviolable, and inalienable value of personhood. Each and every human being is unique insofar as she is an expression of a depth that is ever a source of creativity, willfulness, and decision. Man in his hair freedom is the very height of his hair being. How she uses that freedom in biomedical issues is not only a concern about the limits of how far she can go, but is first and foremost a question of who she is or what is she to become given her biomedical decisions. The questions of ethics applied in this field are not only about the treatment of patients and clients. They inquire first and foremost about humanity that involves us all, including medical practitioners themselves. Treating the embryo as a human person not only ensures the dignity and value of the fetal life that is being studied. The principal engage the medical practitioners and researchers themselves. Such an approach in biomedical ethics raises the question about the kind of humanity that is endorsed by the research and built up in the very study that is conducted. Using the advancements in medicine to improve the well-being of persons may be very attractive but also misleading if we treat physicality as an end in itself. An integral personhood involves not only external or bodily improvements. An actualized person includes his her entirety, that is satisfaction not only regarding his her exteriority or physicality but a deeper interior kind of happiness too. Sustaining respect for the person until death moves us away from euthanasia that may be marked by impatience towards the process of death. This does not mean that dignified dying and pain management are excluded in what we ought to secure in this end of life concerns. Autonomy of the human person is respected in hospital, that the living will is of utmost importance and VNR posts are ensured to be consistent with them. Death being the very end of the life for the human person is included in the very reality of personhood. That dignity ought to be maintained until then. Thank you for watching and listening for my report.